We talked last time about how we should act against climate change no matter what. But now I'm going to dive deeper into why we should trust the scientific method and what the science says, because it's not a question about believing, it's about trusting. But there is only one way to talk about science properly, isn't there? And that is with a good old-fashioned lab coat. Hello my friends, and welcome to SeThi, the show where we seriously think that evidence for argument has become more neglected throughout this day and age, more than ever before. In today's day and age where data and analyzing of data becomes more and more important, it has never been easier to back up your arguments with observations based in the past. However, unbiased analysis is almost impossible unless you really root your arguments on hard data, which is what science is really trying to solve. So what is the scientific method? Do we remember this from high school? Because you had to write a whole bunch of reports, I'm assuming. Well, first up you have the hypothesis. Basically you choose a topic, but then you sort of try and see, okay, based on previous research and based on previous knowledge, what will happen in this experiment? Just to give your research some foundational ground, because science is built on top of each other. Based on laws A and B, if they work all the time like they should, if done by experiments, then version C built on top of that should also be solid, because A and B are solid. And then of course, step 2, you remember the variables. Well, in a science experiment you need to make sure to control as many as possible. For instance, room temperature, room moisture, light, depending on whether you're doing something with plants, for instance. This gives your results less variables to deal with. Like if there's an outlier, you can already say it's not because the temperature dropped in the room because someone opened the window, for instance. And so what you want to do with these variables over time is, of course, change one at a time. The reason it's important to control the experiments is to really make your thesis at the end be strong and say, okay, this is the only thing that's changed, and these are the effects that one change has caused. It's quite critical. Step 4, methodology, is results and calculations. They are all about transparency. Like I said, science is built on top of each other, and so for theory C to work, you need to be sure that you can create scenario A and scenario B consistently. And so for others to work up your research, of course experiment C has to be able to be redone. If you set out everything like the room temperature, these are like variables that may not necessarily be important, but play an important role in recreating the experiment from someone, if someone else wants to do that. And then conclusions, they are all about personal biases. Like the conclusions you make are obviously based on your perspective, and so that's one thing that should never... It has to do with your own biases, but also like the environmental context. Like you can say, for instance, if you're doing an experiment outside, the weather was sunny or it was rainy. It's kind of at the moment in the transition of change right here. It was more sunny when I came here. Now it's looking kind of cloudy. Oh well. As for the discussion, that's the time where you ask, okay, now that we've done this experiment, how can we improve it? Where did we maybe do a misstep? What strange things happened, so that again you can be transparent with that and give scientists in the future more ideas on how to solidify your thesis. And then of course lastly, on the discussions, you go back to your hypotheses and see whether it was correct or not, because oftentimes it will be, but if it's not what is expected, then there should be, then either there's been a mistake in the experiment, or there is some new discovery that people haven't predicted before. So those are the 6 steps: hypothesis, controlling the variables, changing one, methodology results in conclusion or calculations, showing like the process, and then conclusions and discussion. So all science is basically based on previous research, which kind of is like a controlled way of doing. They draw conclusions based on previous experiments and observations. And this is basically learn by doing in a more controlled setting than the actual life can provide us. That's why labs are often so their own thing. They want to control as many things as possible. And so the reason why we should trust the scientific method and the science is because it's based on learn by doing and learn based on previous observations, which is exactly what we do in real life. Like, for instance, if there's this one part on a climbing course that you can't do, and you keep trying it the same way, then you know there's a high chance of you not making that part. It's because you're doing it that specific way, and so you're going to adapt your approach to that part. And so in terms of the learn by doing, we are practical and visual learners, and that's where this science comes in, because science is basically using math as a way to visualize, see or measure observations. And so it is really great what science has done for us. For instance, I couldn't be able to be talking to all of you right now if it weren't for science. How is that? Truth is based on perception, and so consistent perception is a way of measuring truth, or that's at least what the scientists think. And me too, by the way. There is, however, one thing that is happening across the world. It is often talked about how science helps our society be more technologically advanced. And that is true. However, have you heard of people going vegan? Research shows that the meat and dairy industries are causing most of human problems. No, really. Freshwater shortages, cows drink a lot of water, which is needed for the meat and dairy industry so that they can be healthy as long as possible, quote unquote healthy. Also, you know how we come from apes? Have you ever seen them eat meat? Didn't think so. That's because they, like us, are built vegan. But that deserves another episode. Point is, this veganism trend, the science behind it, destroys the rest of the industries. I talked about meat and dairy, but also there's, well, the whole pharmacy industry, since, well, they provide medication. There's a whole bunch more than that, but like I said, that deserves its own episode. Point being, big political and economical stakeholders are trying to hide and repress data from reaching the public. And because they have the money and the authority, they can easily just try and suppress this information from reaching us. And that is like the total opposite of what science is all about. It's all about getting reliable information that we can build our expectations and experiences on. It's trying to achieve to deliver the truth in a comprehensible way. And that's why I think science should be its independent thing. It should actually be fan-funded, not funded by the government or by companies, because they have their own interest. They should be not associated with anything, because that way no one can influence that data that science is putting out there. They should basically be an NGO in some sort of ways. And I'm sure everyone wants to support some sort of research too, because as I said, science has led to some incredible technological advancements. For instance, this thing. In today's day and age where data is becoming more and more important and its analysis, remember that science wants to help deliver the truth. Next time you look at a graph, check the numbers on the side, check everything around the graph, because the graphs usually tend to be correct, but they can often be misleading based on the way they present the data. The data is usually always correct. The way they got the data, however, depending on what study you're searching, can be false. So always cross-check your information with other sources so that you can make your own decision on what the truth actually is. And that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more episodes that focus on science and potentially can go into water management. But thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.